In this video, we're going to look at all the steps that are necessary in order to create an ASP.NET Web Forms application. Now, we're going to go through this pretty fast, so there are going to be a lot of concepts that are new to ASP.NET, like code behind, like adding server controls to a web form designer, understanding view state, and understanding the event-driven nature of ASP.NET Web Form programming. And we'll talk about these in greater depth in future videos, but just understand that this is a very high-level overview, and you're probably going to have questions when it's done, and that's okay, because in subsequent videos we'll discuss all these topics very thoroughly. So we're going to go ahead and get started by creating a new project. And when the new project dialog appears, we will select Visual Basic Projects, ASP.NET Web Application. We'll rename it to Hello World Languages. The default location is fine. We're going to close the current solution that I had open. And in just a few moments, a new ASP.NET Web Forms application will be loaded into Visual Studio.NET. And when it's finished, the webform1.aspx Web Form Designer will be open in the default position in the main area. And you can see over to your right-hand side, the Solution Explorer has now a number of files that are associated with our new project. First thing that I want to do is scroll down a little bit and rename the web form and call it Hello World, and let it refresh itself. And I'll go ahead and save that. And then the next thing that we want to do is start placing controls on our web form. So to do that, I'm going to first put some labels, and we'll reposition these in just a moment. We're going to actually need 4 labels. We can work with this tight area that we have. The top one will be a header, and we'll format the font and everything to look a little fancier than the rest of the fonts on the page. Give you an idea how to do that. And we'll have a label here that will be next to a text box control, a label here that will be next to a drop-down list control, and then here we'll see the results that will generate. Now I'm going to place a text box and position it correctly. And then I'm going to place a drop-down list box and position that. And then the next thing I want to do is put a button on our web form. And then finally what I want to do, actually 2 things. I want to put a hyperlink underneath my button to return back to the home page. We'll show you how to do that. And then also, I want to put a new control that you're probably not familiar with, which is the required field validator. It's a really neat, easy way to add some sanity checks into your web pages before a form is submitted. So now that we've got all of our forms basically laid out, what I'm going to do is switch to the property view, the properties window, and do most of my work there. So I'm going to reposition the focus. All right, so I've refocused the viewing area. Now what I want to do is change the text to Hello World in Other Languages. I'm going to click the Enter button. And I'm also going to change the font, and I'm going to click this little plus sign to expand the font properties. I overshot it. I'm going to select a different font. You can see here it drops down kind of example of the different ones. And we notice the change that's been made here, and we'll resize this just a little bit. Okay, now we're going to go on to the next label, and we'll change the text in that one to name. And we'll change the text in this one to language. And we'll change the text in this one to be empty by default. And then what I'm going to do is change the identifier, because we're going to refer to this control in code. So we're going to call LBL results. Okay. And then I'm going to select this text box and rename that one as well, text name. And then I'm going to select the language drop-down list and rename that DDL language. And I'm going to change the text on this button to submit. And that should be pretty good for renaming controls. Now, the next thing that I want to do is add some code to make the add options in the drop-down list box, and then also whenever somebody clicks the submit button, it will take whatever's listed in the name and in the language, concatenate them together in the appropriate language, and then put them in the result label right here. So to get to the code behind window for this web form designer, I'm going to double-click the submit button. And when I do, another window will appear in the main area, and we're going to expand that over so we can see it a little bit easier. Now, instead of spend a lot of time here and you watch me code, I'm going to copy and paste the code in. When we click the submit button, it opened up the code behind for the Hello World page, and it also created a shell of a procedure called private sub button one click. Also by default, another shell is created of a procedure called private sub page load, and I've added code to both of these procedures. Let's take a look first at the page load procedure. One of the largest differences from ASP, we'll refer to as classic ASP, and the new ASP.NET is that pages will post back to themselves often, and the reason for this is because the .NET team has built in state management to each page. And so if you populate a drop-down list box and you need to do some other processing on the page and it needs to post back to itself, as we'll see an example of this in just a moment, you don't have to re-add the items every time. So it's a real savings on the amount of code that needs to be generated from your application. So what we do here is we check for that situation. If we're not posting back, then add the following 3 items to our drop-down list box for the languages. And then if somebody clicks the button, what we'll do is a kselect statement to see what language do they select from the drop-down list box, and then depending on the language that they selected, the following text will be written to the LBL result label. So what I want to do now is test the changes that I've made. I want to save all the files that I've changed, and then I want to select build. The output box appears and it shows me that the project has succeeded in compiling. And now I want to view that page in a web browser. So I'm going to right-click helloworld.aspx and select View in Browser. I'm going to close down the output window as well so you can see it all. And when it appears, we can see the results of our work. Hello World in other languages. Notice one thing right now, that our hyperlink, we didn't set any of the properties for that. And also for our required field validator, we didn't set the properties for that. We'll do that in just a moment. But let's just test what we've done so far. I'm going to type in learnvisualstudio.net, and we'll select French from the drop-down list box and hit Submit button. And bonjour, monde, learnvisualstudio.net. Okay, so now that we've tested it just a little bit, let's take a look at what happens whenever we leave the name blank and hit Submit. It says bonjour, but it doesn't give us anything in the name. What we want to do, though, is prevent that from happening. And also we want to supply the hyperlink down here. To do that, we're going to go back and edit our page just a little bit more. And so to do that, what we'll do is go back on our tabs to the Web Form Designer and let us position the viewing area just a little bit better so you can see the properties window. So let's set the properties for the required field validator. The first thing that we want to do is associate the validator with a field. And basically what this is, there's a set of validator controls that come with ASP.NET. And what they do, this particular one makes sure that the field is, that somebody has typed something into a text field or selected something from a drop-down list box. There are also controls to do range checking to see if something's within a certain set of numbers or within a given range, or if it equals a certain value, and if not, it can raise errors, and it saves you a ton of time from writing the JavaScript on your own. And we'll have a whole series of lessons on these coming up soon. So let's do this. We're going to change the error message to say, don't forget the name field, and we're going to select in the control to validate. It'll show us a list of all the controls that it can validate, and we'll select the name control. So that should be all we need to do there, although there are a ton of other properties that we can associate with it. Then I want to set the hyperlink, and what we'll do there is set the text to home, and then at the very bottom we'll select the navigate URL, and a dialog box can appear if you select the ellipsis at the end of that. And we can select another web page or whatever the case might be, and I think I'll just type one in this time. Default.aspx, which does not exist in our project, but we'll create it at some future point in time. And we can also select the target if there were frames, or if we wanted to create a pop-up new web browser to host this in. But what we'll do is just select top. And we'll save our files, and we'll build this again. And now we'll test it one more time. This time I'm just going to select the tab and select refresh browser, and say OK to that. And I'm going to move things out of the way here so you can see what we've done. And this time if I leave that field blank, it says don't forget the field, the name field. And so we can type in whatever, select Spanish this time, and Hola Mundo. And if we click this, we'll get a 404 error because there's no such page found in our project. But that's fine. You get the And that concludes the walkthrough of creating a web form. And you'll probably have a ton of questions, and that's great. We'll explain every single aspect of ASP.NET Web Forms in subsequent LearnVisualStudio.NET videos. Thank you very much. We hope you enjoyed this video.